Oh yes, the sounds of Fintroll with Urzvan. Before that, the one and only Captain Dan and the Scurvy Crew, Blackbeard's Treasure. Check them out at myspace.com/Captain Dan and buy their album. It is Imba, I know, because it is in my collection. Okay. One final topic for today. It is...
Second Wind!
Yes! I kind of cocked my head so far that I almost fell off my chair. That would have been comedy. It would have been like... or something along those lines. Anyway, right. Let's get on with it, I must say. What's my second wind topic for this week? Racial priest spells, or specifically, why the hell doesn't every other class have them? Always something which has puzzled me, and people are giving me various justifications like, well, it's to get somebody to play a priest, because priests aren't very interesting. So you want to give them a reward. Okay, fair enough, a semi-valid point. Well, let's talk about another point. Well, it's for law reasons. You can't have all priests be the same, because they aren't the same. You see, an undead priest is a... yeah, whatever. Not a law buff. What can I say? Leave that to the law keepers on Monday nights. So, what is the justification behind it? It is a very odd thing. It's also a very cool thing. I'm not going to dispute that. I've always been very much an advocate of making races different. And WoW pretty much monumentally fails at doing that. It's really bad when it comes to that, compared to, say, the Dungeons & Dragons mechanic or many other games. Picking a race is pretty much an aesthetic decision for you, and not a gameplay decision. It doesn't affect your manner of play very much at all. Racials are not powerful enough to spin your game so far, which is why I always believe that, say, Will of the Forsaken should have never been nerfed, and everyone else should have just had their racials buffed, so they were as useful and powerful as Will of the Forsaken. Yes, I did just say that. I never believed that Will of the Forsaken should have been nerfed, no matter how frustrating it was for me in duels. Well, big deal. Racials should at least be powerful to some degree, and right now they really aren't. Not even the Blood Elf and Draenei ones. People might say, wow, I can torrent, but seriously, does that really affect your gameplay that much? No, it really, really doesn't. So, why priest racials, of all things? Those of you not in the know would be interested to hear that priests get different spells and abilities. I believe it's 2 different spells and abilities per race. Now, for instance, Star Shards is one of the Night Elf priest racials, and it's absolutely terrible. Absolutely diabolical, whereas Desperate Prayer is one for, I believe, what is it? Humans, of course, yeah. Now, that is really, really useful. It's also a real bloody killer in PvP. Desperate Prayer is a really, really quick, or it may even be instant. I don't know, I don't play Alliance. And it's a heal on a long cooldown. And it's really, really nice. It's kind of like a mini lay on hands. However, they also get something called Feedback, which is absolutely disgracefully terrible in every way. It's a high mana AoE mana drain, I believe, of some description, a mana burn. It's really not very good at all. If you want more information on the priest racials, WoW Insider actually has an article today on it. Go to wowinsider.com and have a look at it while you're listening to this, and then try and form your opinions on the basis of it. Why? Why priests? It's rather odd. The best example, to be quite honest, of a priest racial which is genuinely useful would probably be Fear Ward, and that is Dwarven Priests. And you'll be well aware that Fear Ward is mind-numbingly useful in PvE encounters. It's awesome. It really is. It's absolutely brilliant. If you read the early Magmadar tactics, the guilds taking him down were having a lot easier time if they had Dwarf Priests. Forcing people to play Dwarves is a very cruel thing to do, in my opinion, because, let's face it, there is no uglier race in WoW. But not too bad an idea as regards to making that class particularly useful. It does make me wonder, maybe it's proportionate to how good looking the class is. But then again, why exactly would you have troll racials like Shadowguard being so annoyingly silly? We will never know. So, it's interesting because Aenix actually said that it's likely that at some point in the future you'll see additional improvements to priest racials. Okay, fair enough. But is this just a way to buff priests? Now, back in the day, priests, and as far as I'm aware, did not have the, quote, balance issues that they claim to have right now, as in being out-healed by hybrids. To my knowledge, that was never the way of it. Priests were always the most popular healing class. Every guild needed priests. They were desperate for them. Not enough people were playing them because, well, they're healing classes. Healing classes aren't always that popular, especially priests, who are the archetypal healing class. They're one of the big three. The big three being the triangle of the three classic role-playing classes: warrior, priest, mage. Your damage dealer, your tank, your healer. Anyone that's played Final Fantasy XII will be aware of the tri setup right there. They are there, and lots of people don't really like to necessarily play them because they're seen as a healing class. As useful as a Shadow Priest is, they are often seen as a healing class. As dangerous as a Shadow Priest is in PvP, they are often seen, more often than not, as a healing class, and that's the way it's gonna stay because, well, D&D set them up to be like that. And what D&D says is law, to some degree. So why priest racials? The law reason behind it. People basically said that, well, you've got to distinguish the different kinds of priests. Because some believe in some god or another, they believe in the light or whatever that is, and some of them don't. Undead priests probably being the primary example. Undead priest racials, not really based on healing, to be quite honest. If I remember correctly, Devouring Plague is one of their racials, and it is a DOT. That's designed for Shadow Priests. That's not particularly useful for Holy. Whereas, of course, Fear Ward is more useful for a PvE priest. Fear Ward, in my opinion, of course, being mind-numbingly more useful than Devouring Plague in any other priest racial. But now, it comes around to the topic of why priests and nobody else. I believe that racials are an exceedingly good way to diversify, an exceedingly good way to give you a reason or a reason not to play a particular class. Now, people might cry balance issues and say, well, you know, everyone would just play this, this is clearly better than this. That's already there to some degrees. People will min-max as much as they possibly can. You found people going for Tauren tanks over Orc tanks. Why? Because Tauren tanks got 5% extra health. And that could make the difference. People want to min-max, so everyone says, well, you need to be a Tauren tank. I've seen high-end guilds recruiting, back in the day, pre-TBC, they recruit specifically, we want a Tauren warrior, prospect. We do not want an Orc warrior, we do not want an Undead warrior, we do not want a Troll warrior, we want a Tauren warrior. Other people might say, well, the Tauren stats-wise, base stats-wise, is set up to be a warrior. Okay, that's fine, until you take into account that base stats are pretty much meaningless, because gear becomes the way to gain stats. Base stats are not going to affect you past the first few levels, at all. As soon as your gear starts getting heavy stats on it, your base stats are pretty much meaningless. So we're looking at once you start acquiring significant numbers of greens, maybe between the levels of 10 to 15, your base stats become absolutely pointless. You're not going to say that, hey, well, let's go for this race because of this. You could say on the mage perspective that a gnome mage is the best mage, and you'd probably be right, because they do have an ability, which a racial, specifically the passive racial, that gives them more intellect, just like a Tauren tank. But their base stats, well, they don't really make much of a difference. It's the racial passive that makes the difference. And those passives, the stat-affecting passives, are really the only racials which make a massive amount of difference in the game as a whole from an endgame perspective, in my honest opinion. Now, I would definitely like to see more racials. Now, race/class racials are an amazing idea. They are a really good idea. These racial spells are a fantastic idea to diversify classes. I would like to see them on every single class. I will make absolutely no qualms about saying it. I would love to see these abilities on all classes and all races. Balance issues? Yeah. Sure. No problem whatsoever. However, balance issues are always going to be there. Always said it. I'll continue to say it. Balance issues till the end of bloody time, until the last server in WoW gets shut down. Someone will be complaining about a balance issue somewhere. Live with it. I would rather see the game be more interesting and more diversified. I was one of the primary opponents to the homogenization of the classes, as in bringing Shaman to Alliance side and bringing Paladins to Horde side. I posted a big-ass thread on the EU forums. It got loads and loads of replies, like 50, 60 pages long. No blue response, of course. Oh no, they're being critical of us. And I hated that. I hated to see that homogenization. And while I will still use Paladins in my raid now that they're available to me, that is simply because, well, they're available. If they weren't there, I'd be using another class. And I really do hate to see the fact that the only major difference between the two factions has been eliminated right then and there. And it sucks. Now, for second win this week, yes, I did just say
Second win!
I would like to know your opinion as regards to racial spells. What sucks, what doesn't. But specifically, I want you to be a little bit creative. I want to hear what your class and your race is, yeah? And I want you to make up a racial spell for it. And try and make it balanced. Let's see if the community can come up with balanced racials that would actually have a positive, diversifying effect on the game as a whole. Email themurloc@gmail.com for that, as for everything. themurloc@gmail.com. And it's shout-out time, folks. Octal and Horde coming up in 3 minutes. I would like the shout-out sent to me. Send them right now. It's themurloc@gmail.com or PM me on IRC. Go up to the website, wcradio.com, click the IRC chat button at the top of the screen, or connect via irc.wow.irc.com. Do it now. Shout-outs coming out to Terpster, apparently. Let's go from Kevin Kern. I want to give a shout-out to Terpster for being F-bombing awesome. See you guys at BlizzCon. Yes, indeed, you should check out Terpster's Terpster Vision series, which is perhaps some of the most wacky and Ricky Gervais-style comedy I've ever seen. He's got them up on YouTube. Go and check it out. Terpster Vision, also on our front page. A shout-out to Luku and Aina celebrating the birth of their 14th baby. What the hell? P.S. Playing The Sims is fun. Yeah. Luku, you're very, very disturbing. A shout out to Viper from Jarek on Nath. Woot, that's from Jarek. A shout out to Paladins. Keep on healing even through our nerf. Can I get a shout out to the Exiled Empire Guild on Dark Iron US? And are you going to do Chronicles 3 anytime in the future? Yes, there are plans to do Chronicles 3. Maybe during July. Possibly, if I get the time. A shout out to Elite Applesauce on Crust Ridge US from Quicklet. Elite Applesauce! That's the most RP name I've ever seen. Howdy. Do I PM racial? No, don't PM me racials. Email me for next week, themurloc@gmail.com. If you PM me, I am going to ignore it for racials. Second win next week, email me, themurloc@gmail.com. Hey TB, will you guys sign t-shirts at BlizzCon? Yes, we will. Shout out to you for being winsome. Ugh. A shout out to Yoxid and Balnazar for getting a gold buyer suspended for 3 days. 3 days? Is that it? That's pathetic. Ban him now. Time Guild on Kazgaroth. Kill Magtheridon already. That's from Korzakindingib, whose name I cannot pronounce. A shout out to Dotted from Dotted, because he is full of dots dotting him. That's from Dotted. What are you talking about, you nutters? A shout out to me on Aigwin for Mother Russia. That's from someone who doesn't actually give himself a name, which is really not helpful. A shout out from Afterburn to Paladins. Also, OMG, we're going to have to use mana, live with the nerf. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. What else have we got? Email-wise, many shout-outs spamming my inbox left side and even side. A shout-out to Yeah Boys on Laughing Skull EU from Kilius. I really do hope that's ironic. A shout-out to Mittens, who will never return to IRC. Evan, who has given up WoW. Thanks for the good times. That's Alex Gill, also known as Mittens. We miss Mittens. We want Mittens back. A shout-out to War Stomp and Run on Earthen Ring US, going to Karazhan on Tuesday, most likely with less than 10 players, but we're going anyway. I like that attitude. Go and wipe. Go and wipe for the good of the land. A shout out to Incarnated for boosting me through Razor Fen Crawl, Gnomeregan and Stockades from Capricorn to the Maelstrom EU. A shout out to my 70 Pally Dipstick. Vote for her in Miss Trollbane 2007 on the Trollbane forums. Voice from BC. Oh, that's great. Everyone head over to the Trollbane forums. I don't know if that's EU or US. Oh, it's a hotmail.co.uk, so it will be US. Sorry, US, EU. Blech. Brain dying. Yeah, go to the Trollbane forums on EU and vote for Dipstick, the level 70 paladin on the Miss Trollbane competition. Go and do it. That's my endorsement right there. Shout out, OMG, shout out to Blizzard, the guy who actually forged my life and given me something to look forward to every day. And by the way, could Slanik have babies? That is the most disturbing thing to sign off on I've ever seen in my life. Lalunus, you are a freak of nature. This has been Blue Please. I have been Total Biscuit. Listen to the archive, download the shows, and do all this good stuff. Hotel and Horde coming up right after this. Hope you've enjoyed the show today. Good night and enjoy.